Talks. My name is Tom. Today, the panel subject is to discuss the various aspects of smartphone filmmaking. The first question I have for you guys is, mainly because I'm a bit selfish in this regard, for the benefit of a newcomer to smartphone filmmaking such as myself, do you have any advice for those just starting out, and how have you found your experiences and skills with smartphone filmmaking have evolved as time has gone on?
Anyone jump in?
So yeah, the phones are nowadays become smarter and smarter, so that's why it's called smartphones, right? So most of the smartphones now, if you think about Androids or Apple, like all of them are having the feature where you can change the settings to manual settings and adjust the ISO, aperture, white balance, and everything. So as a smartphone filmmaker, we can take an advantage of those things you know, there are a lot of gadgets out there. Like I have a few handy, I can show you, like stabilizer and all you can use in your filmmaking, like this one, Zion stabilizer, or you know, other like microphones you can attach on your smartphones, some recorders you can use, tripods and sliders. And with those gadgets and the smartphone in manual recording, you can achieve the film look. People will never imagine if you enter film just on the smartphone or in a big production camera, because it's about the end, end of the project, like how you serve the dish, you know, in the end. So yeah, I would say like people should take an advantage of these smartphones they have handy, you know, instead of buying big bulky cameras and you know, lose their budget. They can spend budget in somewhere else in, you know, production, creativity and all. Anyone else?
Yeah, I can jump in. I think I'll leave Dan the last. He must be having expert knowledge on that. I haven't actually produced or directed any or made any smartphone short films, but I do kind of regular filming on my smartphone, and I think that's everyone has almost nowadays. Everyone has the smartphone in their hands, and again, only I can say for anyone who just want to create something at the least minimum equipment, I would say smartphone is a magical instrument they have. They can go for it. So I would say just one advice is go for it. If you have something to tell, anything you want to tell in a different way, you can straight away jump on your smartphone. It has almost all the capabilities to capture what you want and then create and present the way you want it. So my only advice would be you should go for it with your smartphone.
I'm probably going to echo the similar thing to what you've both just said, but absolutely, you know, there's endless arguments with film professionals. You know, is it a serious tool for filmmaking or not? And you know what? It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, can you tell a good story? Can you connect with the audience? Can you engage the audience? Tom, we were mentioning a film that's screened recently as part of a festival put on by Mina in Melbourne, and there was a premiere of a film, One Punch, which was shot on a smartphone. And we were saying we were aware it was a smartphone film. The first few minutes we were kind of looking out for it, but after those first few minutes we were lost in the story. Didn't matter what it was filmed on. So, you know, it's an old argument in some ways. It's not the camera for everything, sure. You know, it does have limitations, and a big part of making it work is learning how to work within those limitations. So, you know, it's not a giveaway that it's a phone. It does have a very particular look, but it also has a whole bunch of advantages as well, which is really interesting, you know, where it might be a conscious choice to shoot on a phone. You know, it has its own film grammar and film language. You know, it looks a very particular way. It's light and nimble, so it can move in a particular way, very fluid. It can put it in small corners where you can't put a big camera. You can get into communities where you couldn't go with a film crew, and you know, so it has this whole other kind of, you know, it could be a social media type storytelling tool. So there's a whole lot of things that you can't do with traditional cameras and traditional crews. And and it's really its own, creative, another tool in your toolkit, really, that you have as a filmmaker. Importantly, we've all got one, and compared to the phones of 5-10 years ago, that's incredible what we can do now to film, to edit. We've all got one in our pocket, and of course, there's really no excuse to not be making films now. You can have that project in development for 10 years trying to get it funded, but there's no excuse not to be making films, getting better, experimenting, doing things your own way. You can learn all of the basics that you would need to know with proper filmmaking or professional filmmaking with a smartphone. So yeah, get involved. And in terms of your question was around, how you learn over time. That's kind of the answer. There's no barrier to entry. You can add bits on, you can add gimbals and lenses. You can, I won't tell you how much I've spent on extra bits too, a ridiculous amount of money, but it's scalable. You can scale up as you go. You don't need anything special to start. You can put your film in a camera in a paper cup as a tripod. You can, use a second phone as a microphone. You can just start and as you go, improve what you do. And yeah, there's really zero barrier to entry as a filmmaker.
Excellent. I have a question for Hadik and Sadia. Chemist and IT professional by profession respectively, but filmmakers by choice. What was it that first prompted you to pick up the camera and just start making your body of content? And what challenges have you faced along the way?
So when I was in school and then in college, I'm from India, by the way. I was always fascinated to the cameras, and back then the smartphones were not capable enough to get, good quality results. And I was so fascinated to the cameras, like wanted to appear in front of the camera, wanted to record something with the camera. So my first camera, if I convert in Australian dollars, it was $10 camera I bought in India, and the story has started. It's about it's about 17 years ago when I bought this camera. And then my greed, if I say, it's developed towards the filmmaking, and I couldn't stop. Since then, just started doing. And then when I got the even good mobile phone, I also recorded one short video just using the mobile phone. Back then I had like Samsung Galaxy S4 or 5, and still I was happy with that because the results I was getting, the storytelling and all, I'm feeling like I'm achieving something. So again, the greed developed more and more, and I get into the filmmaking. I learn from my mistakes. As Daniel said, like, if you keep making the films, it's a learning curve. You learn from your mistakes, and you develop your skills more and more, much better in a good level. And now I can say, so far I have used even very professional cameras like Red Epic and FS7 and all these big cameras in my films, and I'm saying like I'm in good path. Sudhir.
Yeah, sorry, Tom, I missed your question in between. It was breaking, so maybe briefly you can ask that question again.
Yeah, so you're an IT professional by trade, but a filmmaker by choice. And what was it that first motivated you to pick up your camera and start making content? And what challenges have you faced along the way?
So for me, it actually worked in a different way. So I bought first DSLR camera back in somewhere 2014 or 2013, and I started then learning, because by then never actually used DSLR. So I had to learn how to use the camera, how to use the technical aspects and things. So I used to watch lots of YouTube tutorial videos on it. And accidentally, I come across many YouTube videos on filming on DSLR. And that actually got me into quite cinematography rather than photography. So I did lots of photography as well on that DSLR, but I really developed my interest towards cinematography. And I tried to learn something around that. When I realized that it's more on cinematography I want to use, I want to learn. I then I got myself admitted into an institute just to learn the whole filmmaking process, because I didn't want me to just focus on one or the other aspect. I wanted to learn almost everything about the filmmaking. And that gave me kind of opportunity to come across almost all the aspects filmmaking is about. And that is something where my hobby turned into a kind of a professional path to work on that journey. That's how I got into it.
Fantastic. My next question there is, when you were shooting and editing your films, did professional mobile film apps like Filmic Pro, Rush, or LumaTouch play any role in it, or did you just tend to shoot your footage with your phone and then upload it to a different editing software on your computer?
There are a lot of mobile apps out there for video editing. If someone wants to shoot and edit entire film project just with within the smartphone, then of course for Androids, I'm an Android user, by the way, so I know more about Android apps. Filmic Pro, as you mentioned, there are other apps like Filmora and Filmmaker Pro and all these apps out there, which are most of them are the paid apps, but for $10 to $20 investment, you can achieve a lot of functionality, and you can edit a lot of things within the app, and you can achieve good special effects or nice cut and transitions on your mobile phone filmmaking. So yeah, I would suggest to go with, but in most cases, I tried Filmic Pro once and I really liked it, but in the small screen, I'm not kind of go-to guy for film edit into the smartphone. So I usually prefer Adobe Premiere Pro and Adobe After Effects sort of apps. For video, I use Adobe Audition for editing, but it's up to the person, up to the filmmaker, who it's their choice. Like if they want to choose the higher end softwares or they just want to use the mobile smartphone apps. And there are a lot of film festivals which promotes the mobile filmmaking to be done just by using the smartphones, like film and edit just by the smartphone. So for those sort of film festivals, these kind of apps can be handy. For Apple users, there's like iMovie app you can use. So yeah, there are great solutions out there.
Dan, you and I were talking earlier about how your experience with filmmaking teaching in the community and how they handle apps like Filmic Pro as opposed to just making films with a more clunky
the native apps.
Elaborate on that?
Yeah, we did a community workshop a while ago and we started with Filmic Pro, and we found that it was too much. People were just starting out and it was another level of complexity. And so I think all of these apps like Filmic Pro for more camera functions or better editing apps, they add functionality when you have some basic skills. So it's probably best to start with the simplest option, just to start making films, whether that's the built-in video camera app or iMovie, as Sadiq mentioned on iPhone. Adobe Rush is another really great, simple but pretty powerful tool which works on some Android and iPhone. And there's a bunch of other options as well, like Power Director. So start with what you can, just the basic tool that you can get access to just film and edit without worrying about the technical, just to start the filmmaking and storytelling. But you will hit a ceiling where you go, I needed to do a little bit more. I need to have a bit more control over lighting or exposure or color balance or something like that, or frame rate. And then you'll need something like Filmic Pro, or you might hit a ceiling with iMovie, where you have one or two layers in your editing and you go, I need a better tool because I need more layers. Or so yeah, I think don't worry too much about it initially, but yeah, it does slow you down, I think, if you're starting and worried about the technical stuff, and actually for a lot of people, that can be such a barrier. They go, I'll never figure it out, so I'm not going to start. The key is to start the simplest tool and then add more as you need to, you know. And as Hadik mentioned too, I think before, YouTube tutorials, you know, there's so much information out there now about regular filmmaking, about smartphone filmmaking. Filmic Pro, you know, Mina have had lots of tutorials about iPhone filmmaking. So you can always find the answer to what you want to know, but if you try to know everything, you'll never begin. So yeah, just start making something.
Excellent. In Sadia's film, you get a glimpse, just for a second, of a Victoria QR check-in poster, and that sort of adds the timestamp of the COVID-19 pandemic to your film. How has COVID impacted the production of your films recently, and has it impacted the production or and the plots as well?
I should begin with mine. So yeah, I think it's we can actually see the impact on the whole entertainment industry all over the world, you know? And the same thing happened to me as well as a filmmaker. Earlier to this film, which I made in 2019, just the beginning of the pandemic, and I made that film back in India, employing many professional filmmakers in my crew. But when I actually come back to Australia, I was really hoping to start again immediately after that. But because of pandemic, I had to put on hold for everything because it was lockdown. We couldn't actually go out. We couldn't scout for any location, and there wasn't any possibility of employing other people. So that kind of a bit of challenge that I faced, even my latest film, which I actually made just 2 months before so before Diwali, which happened last month. And earlier, I really wanted to have many of my mates who are kind of co-filmmakers here in Melbourne. At least if I have them as my crew, that would have been far better. But I'll end up in doing everything single-handedly. And that was very challenging for me to complete in a given time frame. Within that, curfew period also was hanging, and also employing people, actors and things. So it was a bit of challenges always I faced. And I think that is something made myself restricted to create only one short film within these 2 years. If it was a normal period, I would have produced and directed multiple other films and concepts during this period. That's something I can see as an impact of pandemic.
Do you find it sort of kept you going through the pandemic as well? Well, you have work as well, but did you find it was a good hobby to keep you going through the pandemic?
It's not a great hobby during the pandemic because yeah, it stops us in a lot of ways. Like Sudhir mentioned, like it was very hard. It was a great challenge to find the actors, plus with the restrictions and all, like you can't even have, when there was a very strict restrictions, you can't even go out, you know, of 5 kilometers periphery. So find the actors and cast and crew within the 5 kilometers and getting the permits to shoot and all these things is very challenging. So that's why we had to delay our production a lot. You can see the poster in my background. It's from the short film Aakhri Safar, which we planned to shoot way long ago, like 2 years ago, but because of this pandemic and all these things, it delayed a lot. And we had to shoot as soon as we find the ease of restrictions. We got together, we had to, you know, rush up a lot. And so many times we missed a lot of shots, or because we had to finish due to the curfew and all, we had to finish by certain, you know, time. So it's a great challenge.
I would actually add to Hadik, because the filmmaker I mentioned before that I work with, Matthew Victor Pasta, like it is a challenge, but it's also a creative challenge in some ways. And sometimes creative challenges are actually good, even though it's been a terrible 2 years for everybody and very disruptive.
It was fun.
The filmmaker I work with, he sort of, you know, as things were changing and restrictions were changing, he was going, okay, well, I now need to write my scenes to be outside or socially distanced, or write masks into my scenes, or he actually had some scenes when it couldn't be in somebody's house. He would drop off a camera in somebody's mailbox. The actor would set up the camera and he'd be using Zoom to direct it. The actor had to set up the camera and film themselves. So, you know, filmmakers are so resilient and they always find creative solutions to problems, and COVID was a big one, but, you know, filmmakers find a way. But I think we'll also now see a whole bunch of COVID films, and I think that's a challenge because, you know, we want to obviously be telling unique and original stories, and there's probably going to be a whole bunch of COVID themed stories as well.
During pandemic, I and Sudhir have collaborated together, and we made one short film called Life Changed. It was a good challenge because all of us have, none of us got together. Like we all, so Sudhir wrote the whole story and shared the scripts to all of us, and we recorded each of us our scenes in front of our camera, whatever cameras we had. So I and Sudhir have very professional cameras, but other actors had like normal like smartphones or other cameras, and we still we faced that challenge. And we, as you said, we are resilient. Sudhir and I was instructing like, okay, don't worry, just set up the camera like that, use this angle, yeah, all these things, and it was fun part. And we ended up making that short film, and we were so excited.
That's great.
Excellent. We have already touched on this, but if we can get a debate going between Dan and Hardik, I think, as smartphone filmmaking gets more popular, you're able to get more and more lens and audio attachments to increase the technical professionalism of your final product. Do you find yourself drawn to collecting more and more of these accessories, or do you prefer the more simplistic approach and just working with what you have? I know, Dan, we know your opinions on this. But,
well, yeah, it's interesting. Like, I probably could buy an Arri Alexa with all the accessories I've bought for my smartphone, but you know, it's a ridiculous amount of money. But if you're teaching smartphone filmmaking, it's my excuse. But actually, it's not about, yeah, it's not so much about the gear as we were saying, and it is a barrier to go, oh, I have to have all these things. And like, you know, you can use, you know, curtains or lamps to play with lighting, or you can, you know, the most cameras now have a couple of lens options. You know, we can use a second phone as a microphone. Not great, but still, you know, there are creative solutions. You know, you can stick your phone with a bit of gaffer tape anywhere and nobody will see how you made that shot. So yes, gear is handy once you start to need a few more bits of control, but again, like, I wouldn't suggest to anyone race out and buy gear for your first film, you know, but yeah, if you've got the money and you're really interested in filmmaking and you love smartphone filmmaking, it makes sense. But there is a point where you go, how much money would I spend on a smartphone filmmaking as opposed to buying a bigger camera? You know, it's a question, but.
Buying the camera gears or smartphone gears, there is no limit. Once
True.
you start buying, you keep buying. I have like few $1,000s of gears just for the smartphones, like all the small lenses and yeah, stabilizer I showed you, or the smartphone microphones, or, you know, lapel mics and all these recorders and all.
Although shout out, I mean, I would be careful, I'm not paid by anyone not to start promoting gear, but I do say Rode is an Australian company, RODE, that makes some great microphones. And you can just get like a little lapel mic, which plugs into your phone for about $50, $60. Yeah, or something like that. Little directional one, lapel. That's probably a basic, like, you need to have a good microphone, I think, if you're doing some filmmaking, because the native microphone is not very good in phones. Yeah, that would be a basic piece of toolkit.
Anything more to add to that?
I quickly show you the smartphone I use for mobile phones. So you just, this is the shotgun mic sort of. So you just mount on the mobile phone, you know. This is from Rode. Of course, I'm not also like getting paid by Rode, but still, I love this brand. It's a highly professional and good quality microphones they produce. So yes.
Excellent. And excluding the fact that smartphone filmmaking tends to be quite a lot cheaper, unless you've got gear acquisition syndrome and you're just blowing money on the expansions. Have you had an experience where you've been really grateful that you were filming on a smartphone above any other mode of filmmaking? And do you think that experience, or do you think the fact it's filmed on a smartphone has sort of left a mark on that particular product for the better?
Also, dear, maybe you could talk about sort of SLR, sort of lower budget filmmaking as well.
Yeah, I think we can surely check on. So I think again, I believe filmmaking is more of sometimes we definitely think of the technical aspects of filmmaking. Rather, I believe there are two aspects: technical aspect as well as artistic aspects. So, and again, at the end of the day, filmmaking is you're telling a story. If you don't have that story, whatever you use RED camera, that won't appeal people. So if you have something interesting to tell, even a smartphone is the big aid to get that capture and display it, you know. So if I compare any other gears to the smartphone one, I can see a big advantage. It's a portability, is mobility. That's something we always get with smartphones. You don't need to worry about carrying lots of gears, worrying about many things, and you just go with your smartphone, you capture what you want, and that would actually give you majority of satisfaction, and as well as whatever you want to capture, you know. If we have to have some bigger like DSLR, and with that you get some light gears as well as sound gears, you will have to worry about so many other things as well. You need to have multiple crew members or something. So I guess there are a big advantages having your filming done on smartphones. I can understand there could be some technical aspects which may not be matched to some other gears capability, but I think, as I said, at the end of the day, if you're telling your story, that's more important than the technical aspect.
I'll probably add in, if it's okay, Heidi, two comments around that. One was an example, a personal example, and again, most of my work's been sort of facilitating others or producing more so than filmmaking, directing, writing, that type of thing. But at the start of doing these workshops, I went out to do a short film on the phone just to practice with it and see how I could do. I have a location example, which was, there was up the road from me here in Sunshine, there's a big foundry, like a metal foundry, where they, bash big bits of metal into shapes, engineering things. And I had a chat to the owner and I said, I want to do a film. And he said, what's involved in that? And I said, I just want to come in with one actor and my phone and no gear and just film this scene. He was like, yeah, okay, that's no problem. So we filmed the scene. Looked great, great location, lots of metal on fire and whatever. And anyway, apparently another film crew contacted him some weeks later and said, oh, can we do filming here? And he said, yeah, what do you want? And they were like, we want to block the whole factory down for a week and bring in 10 trucks and close everything down. And he's like, no, I'm running a business. I'm not interested. And for me, that was a great example of, it's just, we'll get you things that you just can't get any other way. Another example, I think, is like traditional filmmaking is very expensive. As Sudhir mentioned, like lots of crew, lots of equipment. Because it's expensive, it has to reach a really wide audience. Smartphone filmmaking doesn't. If it's very low budget and low cost, you can make something for a very niche or very unique, specific audience. There might be 100 people around the world that really want to see what you're doing, but you can reach those different audiences because you don't have the big budgets. It doesn't need to reach as many people. I think that's a real plus as well.
Fantastic. Okay, guys, thank you so much for participating.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, everyone. It was
Thanks,
nice chatting.